Hi, my name's Kelly Nightingale, 911 East First. Kind of nervous, but I grew up here. My family is all from here. My grandfather fought World War II. He'd been discriminated against just because he fought World War II. My father fought in the Vietnam War, came back home, was called a baby killer. Growing up, I was called fat. I think everybody's been discriminated in one way or another. From what I understand, I've been a Minnesota in this town, and from what I understand is Kansas is a blue sky. And it's a blue sky state where they can fire you because today's Tuesday, from what I understand, by law. But I think what we're getting at is, damn, I'm nervous, but what we're getting at is we don't need the city to go in and regulate what people are doing. They're like discrimination or not. Gosh dang. But anyways, like what Clint said, the city has a certain job that they have to do. And as long as those are being abided by, it shouldn't matter if you come in, you got 4 legs, 2 legs, 8 legs, gay, straight, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's the city has a certain job to do. The taxpayers pay that to have them do it. I don't think there's any more regulation that needs to be done. I think the government's a little too much encroaching anyways on our lives, so that's basically all I gotta say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Steve Kelly and live at 10406 East First Street, and appreciate all y'all doing providing leadership for our city or community. I know it's difficult at times. I think when we look at ordinances like this, there's oftentimes concerns that are borne out by actions later on about ambiguous terms, such as public accommodations. What does that mean? Can you tell me what that means, public accommodations?
It would be defined in an ordinance, but essentially
But it could be anything.
goods and services that are generally made available for the public.
And so it kind of is intended to drive out any differences in thoughts that doesn't comply with that ordinance. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
It hasn't been too long ago, and the state stepped in and voted that they would protect agencies that did adoptions according to their beliefs. Catholic adoption agencies, Christian adoption agencies. They represent about 1/3 of the adoption agencies in the state. 2/3 of the other adoption agencies actually place adoptions in non-traditional families. There was a move afoot to try to take away any public working with the government from Christian organizations according to a non-discrimination plank that had been put into an ordinance. The legislature passed it to protect and said, we need diversity. Diversity is good, we all like diversity. And so it allows for 1/3 of the adoptions to continue to be placed in traditional homes and 2/3 to be placed however. That's good. Some of the things that we're finding is non-discrimination ordinances that are passed, and I believe everybody should be treated with respect. But what happens oftentimes is that with a non-discrimination, it becomes a discrimination against a new group. And we found that, you've read the cases about the baker in Colorado, underneath an ordinance that was under the city, oftentimes a human relation committee, that decided that he could not refuse doing a cake and all for a gay wedding. So they fined him heavily, tried to run him out of business, went to the Supreme Court. They ruled in favor and said it was religious discrimination. It came back, they're after him again, he's in court. He said there's plenty of people to do the cakes in Colorado, but I can't do it because I don't believe that under my Christian beliefs. Well, he wasn't allowed to have that difference in opinion under that ordinance. Everybody would abide by it or they'd be run out of business. Another famous case out there is a lady in California who's a florist, who was friends with a gay person, and he said, I'd like for you to do my flowers for my wedding. And she said, I'd love to, but I can't because it doesn't comply with my religious beliefs, but there's a lot of other florists and I'll recommend. It's okay. But somebody else heard the story and filed a complaint, and now she's being threatened with losing her business, her house, and everything because she won't comply with that, even though there's thousands of florists elsewhere. We're going to drive out any differences in thought. That's a concern that we have with non-discrimination ordinances, that they become discriminatory. So I think if we look at this, we need to very clearly define what we mean by discrimination. We need to be very clear on protecting those who have a deeply held religious objection, and it's protected under something like this, even though I question whether or not this is a city function to do something like this. But if we go forward in the path, we just need to understand that those ordinances have been misused all over the United States. You can look them up. They're being used to discriminate against people, not provide non-discrimination. And so I think we have to be very careful, and I think that's why people are kind of hesitant to accept these kind of things straight off, because we know it's that first step down a slippery slope. So that's the only thing I think, is just be cautious. I've hired hundreds of gay people. The last guy that I had do a year fellowship with me at my request was a black gay person. So I have lots of friends that are gays. I want them to be treated equally, but I don't want there to be incorporated in some kind of legislation that discriminates against people who think differently. That's my only thing. Thank you.
Let me clarify the employment side. The employment side, it's easy as a gay man to get a job. All I have to do is not put my husband's photo on my desk. All I have to do is live in a closet for 20 years in the U.S. Army. It's really easy to get a job. It's really easy to get fired. Because one slip up of a pronoun and say, my husband, or say he, when talking about a weekend, what'd you do this weekend? My husband and I did this. Bam, you can get fired, because we're not a protected class. That's where the employment discrimination comes in. It's not on the hiring, folks. All sound hiring practices will always choose the best candidate, period. But getting fired is way too easy. Blue sky, yep. At will, we can let you go for any reason. But I can't let you go because you're a woman. I can't let you go because you're a white male Christian. I can let you go because you're gay, lesbian, bisexual. Those are the problems that we need to be leaders, and we need to set the standard.
I agree with you, Rick. I agree with you. Yeah, you know I do. Yeah, and but again, if we look at anything like this, we just have to be very clear, because a non-discrimination ordinance will become a discrimination ordinance.
And we have to keep fear out of this, folks.
Yeah.
Okay, the baker, the pizza, the flour, those are the exceptions. Free market says, if you don't want to do the work, price it to where your customer won't buy it. And you know what? At some point, you price it high enough, you'll cave, you'll do the work.
Yeah, yeah, and I just mentioned a few. They're all over the United States.
They're not, but how many LGBT people don't have a mechanism to report the discrimination and are uncounted? That's the problem.
Well, the problem is that these people don't have the religious protections. That's the problem.
They do. The clauses are there, and the state has them, the federal has them, and we will reference them by inclusion, is how Chris has stated that we are going to look at building an ordinance and referencing those religious protections by inclusion, because we can't exclude them. Even under home rule, we can't exclude the state or the federal religious protections, okay?
Well, you wouldn't have thought that they would have done it to the cake baker and to the one doing the florist, but they did.
Discrimination isn't
They
discrimination, it's
Yeah,
accountability, man.
but the only people that win on that is lawyers.
Yeah, but anyway, Rich, I support the protection of all people in those areas. Not at all. I just don't want it to be written that, hey, we've come up with a new discrimination because somebody goes, that's fair enough. Just like the adoption agencies. You don't do it our way, we're gonna push you out of public
The
benefit.
adoption agencies is they wanted their cake and eat it too. They wanted the state money for placements, but they wanted to play by their own rules. That's where the problem came in with the adoption agencies.
But that's okay, because what you're saying is that if you don't play by those certain rules, then you don't play at all.
We
That's
fight the same rules as
discrimination.
everybody else.
Yeah, and that's good. That's good. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
like I needed to get up in order.
Would you state your name, please?
Yes, of course. My name is Fabiola Flores. I live at 704 Old Trail Road. I'm a community member for a few decades. I am an immigrant, like my daughter said earlier, and so I've had to not only endure the culture shock, but find myself noticing that I was different in a very white world. I was not. So I learned a lot. Hard times tend to do that, teach you lots of stuff. I am also a daughter of a pastor. I am a pastor's kid, and also who turned out to be a missionary as well. So I'm also a missionary kid, and I am the proud mother of a gay 16-year-old girl. And that puts conflict in a lot of places because of where I'm from. And where I come from is a very specific culture and ideals. So at some point in my life in the United States, I took an anti-racism training. I didn't think I needed it because I am a brown person and I thought I know all about this. Turns out I needed it because I am both a victim and complicit. I am both, there's this image that they have in the training I took, which I think everybody should take because it goes beyond the racism. It is based on racism, but it points out a lot of things about our own role in society. So there's this cage. It's called the cage of oppression. And in this cage you have like different levels, right? Like where the lines for the cage, you can picture a cage. And in this part you can put privileges and the lack thereof. So if you are heterosexual, you have that privilege because then, like you are the norm, right? Underneath heterosexual, you can put gay because they're gay because they are the opposite, right? They're not hetero. And you can put a whole bunch of things in it, and you can find yourself being the oppressor and being the oppressed within the same cage, right? So I am a heterosexual woman. I have that going for me. I don't have to worry about people calling me anything. I don't get to hear what my daughter hears because I am not gay. But I'm not white, so I know what it's like to not have that privilege, right? So we all have that duality, right? We all have been oppressed and we all have been the oppressors in one way or another. None of us, not one single person in this room is free from that. Right? Can we all agree with that?
No.
Okay.
No. No.
No?
No. Mrs. Flores, you can keep speaking to us, okay?
Okay, well, that's fine. That's interesting, though. And there's something that comes into play with that, and that is systems, right? We are all part of a system, correct? So in the system, let's say that the system is this cage. who has the power and who doesn't. So when we are governing, when we are, like, I am the boss of my house, right? I am the queen of that castle. I have that power. And with that power, I can do whatever I want within my walls, right? But if I abuse my power, somebody's gonna come, they're gonna come knocking at my door, right? I'm gonna be held accountable for the abuse of that power. And I sure hope so. Not that I will. I won't. I love that kid with all my heart. And her well-being is mine. And her well-being is yours.
No, I don't agree.
You don't agree that her well-being is mine and that our well-being is yours?
I don't agree that it is my responsibility,
No.
the city's responsibility to make sure, and I agree with what has been said before. I know Christina, you commented, and I'm not, it's not my desire to interrupt you, that's rude. And so if I responded, and maybe I should have waited, if you need to finish that,
Could I?
yes, you may. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. We have rules, right? And we have a way of working within society, right? So that we function, so that we can move forward. Whenever any group in our community has suffered, would we agree that the suffering of the African Americans during slavery was unthinkable and unspeakable? And we needed to make that change. That was an important change, not just for the African American community. It was an important change for all of us. How did you not benefit from their freedom? How can you not benefit from knowing that you have covered the basis for the human rights within your community? You're right, you are not in charge of my kid. I am in charge of my kid.
That's right.
You're right that I pay my bills. That's not your responsibility. You are absolutely right. You're right that I have to pay my taxes. I pay my taxes because my taxes make sure that my kid goes to school, that the roads are built, and that, do I pay for your check?
Your taxes pay for our
Okay.
salaries.
So I am contributing to you and you contribute to me. That is the communal benefit.
And I think Pastor Clint explained that, or Commissioner, I'm sorry, yeah. I appreciate-
Commissioner Clint when I'm here.
Commissioner
How's
Clint,
that?
yes, and I apologize, that was not intended, I've always thought of you as Pastor Clint. Commissioner McBroom laid that out very clearly about the city's responsibility. I really appreciate the way that he laid that out. I could not have done that better myself. We can have those thoughts, but the way you laid that out, I applaud you for how you did that. And so, in that way, we do have that responsibility.
Right. So I think that as we talk about this, because I'm pretty sure this is not the end of this, we will continue to talk about this. We all collectively, if we keep showing up, we'll learn more. And we all collectively will probably pull our hair out and then put it back in. We're like, oh no, that wasn't that bad. Or, yeah, that was really bad. But within that struggle, I hope that we understand where we stand within our own structures, and to be self-aware. I love that kid, and I don't ever want her to have a way, to not have a way to advocate for herself on her own or with others. And I love Newton. I haven't always, because I come from cities, and this is not a city. But I have grown to love Newton because there are a lot of people, like my daughter, like these wonderful young men behind here, like this amazing kid right there. I think I know your dad. Who are brave to come and speak to you when you ask a lot of questions about things that you don't know much about.
Mrs. Flores, if I can, I would entertain conversation with you and your daughter as well, as I did with Aaron, and I would welcome that. I really would. I would want to do it with your presence, and I would be interested in hearing more. Again, but I would encourage. I never shared this, and I have 2 children that have special needs, or both have autism, and we have fought with the school district, and if Mrs. Becker was here tonight, she could verify that. We have fought with the school district on more than one occasion because his IEP goals were not being met, and we really felt it was because of the severity of his disability. And so we went through those channels, and I felt like it was effective. And so, Camilla, I would encourage you as well. I would want you to feel powerful enough to be able to do that, that if there's something at the school that's happening, to go talk to the school. We don't have any say over the school. A lot of people are confused.
We have. This is, yeah. Okay. This is not something that we haven't done. We have.
And then, and as far as, and when she becomes 18 and becomes a tax-paying citizen of this community, if she gets property or whatever she does, I would want to know, if in the same position then, if something was if she was not being treated fairly as other individuals were in the community. So
I believe that we have the ability to do great things. And I'm going to keep you accountable to make sure that we do great things.
We're accountable to all the citizens of this community. So.
I'm Donna Sheckler. I'm at 320 Southwest 48th Street. And I want to applaud you, Mayor. I believe that we should wait for the federal level to come down. I think that's the smartest thing. Trying to push it to the city level to enforce an ordinance on our already strained budget doesn't seem like a wise move of our money. And Steve Kelly made some very good points on the same topics. And people getting to be fired just because of their transgender sexual thing happens to everybody. I've been there, probably half these people here. So if we open the can of worms and say, these people are special just because of how they want to identify in a sexual gender, what makes it so? Next year, I'm going to say, well, I'm a fat old lady. I should get special rights too.
You do have special rights.
You already have them.
I don't have any more special rights than you do.
That's not true, ma'am.
Yes, it is. The government gave us all freedom from sexual harassment, our religious freedoms, employment, correct? They were just up there on the board. Yeah, they were.
The government protects against racial discrimination from private institutions.
Okay.
It protects against
sex.
It protects based on your gender.
Sex, not gender. Sex.
Sex.
Yeah, that's
Okay, it protects based on sex. It protects
Okay, those are our government guidelines. There's nothing wrong with
Just for the
them.
benefit of the audience, it's best if you address the commission. Just for an orderly
Yes.
meeting, the commission's been good about giving everyone an opportunity to speak.
I mean, the federal government has already set down guidelines. Why do we have to think we have to broaden them for a special bunch of people who think they need to be above and beyond the rest of us?
We want equal rights.
Those are equal rights. The government gave them the same rights, am I right?
The government gave racial protections, it gave religious protections, but it
Well,
didn't give
you're
sexual
protected by the government under all of those, race, creed, color, and they'd still fall in those guidelines.
You can be fired.
I can be fired for anything. It's blue sky, correct, Mr. Attorney?
Actually, at will.
Yes. So it doesn't matter for the employer's reason. They're hiding behind that skirt, and that's not fair to everybody else that is an employee in this city, in this whole state. Because it applies to everybody. You can be fired for any given reason.
The LGBTQ community is not a special group or anything of the sort, or the group doesn't believe themselves to be something far and beyond. They are a community of human beings that deserve rights.
So they're a community of human beings, just like everyone in this panel, everybody in this room. Just because their sexual preference, why should they be granted special privileges?
Well,
There's no special
It shouldn't happen.
what is the privilege? What is the question?
And again, just for an orderly meeting, it's best if the person at the podium addresses the commission, if the commission
I'm
has a
asking
question.
the commissioners, why would they be granted anything special above every other taxpayer in this town, in this state?
It isn't just special. It's not special. It is leveling the playing field.
They're held at the same,
No, they're not. Listen to my words, okay? You are a protected class as a woman. You cannot be fired, even under the at-will employment. You cannot be fired because you are a woman.
it's happened.
Then you, ma'am, should have got a lawyer.
So every time my feelings are hurt because
I didn't say feelings hurt. I said terminated employment on the basis of your sex.
Yes.
But it's still a blue sky. Yes, you can be fired.
Not for
For
that,
any reason.
not under that protected clause. If you were being fired and you could prove that it was because of your sex, then the at-will gets nullified and you have a legal recourse based off of that illegal termination. That's all we want. Thank you for your words.
Okay.
Come on up, state your name.
Good evening. My name is Donovan Tan. I live at 1008 Trinity Drive, and I'm a Newton resident. I strongly support the proposed Equal Protection Resolution or Ordinance because I believe all people deserve to be equal before the law. As a Newton resident and a person of faith, I enjoy equal protection from discrimination based on age, race, or disability. Over a few years ago, I had a broken leg, and I was able to, for example, use the Chisholm Trail A Theater while I was using a wheelchair for most of about 3 months. And so I benefited from protections through the Americans with Disabilities Act, that I was able to enter that business. I was able to feel like I was an equal part of that community. In my opinion, it costs us very little to extend these protections to sexual orientation and gender, which is not currently protected. It doesn't mean that you can't be fired if you're bad at your job. It means that you can't be fired because of that fact. This proposal seeks, in my mind, equal treatment, not special treatment. It does not replace Kansas law on religious freedom, nor does it change any of the existing protections that all of us enjoy. In fact, it extends it, right? You can't, in this case, be fired because you're straight. My hope is that each person in this room would receive fair and equal treatment in the workplace and beyond, so that we can all contribute to the success of our city. For those who say this is not needed or say that even talking about it is divisive, I understand and I name that fear, and I understand that we disagree. But I believe that the power of this emotion reveals exactly why this change is necessary. As your neighbor, and I hope your friend, I argue that showing respect for others costs us nothing, but it means everything. I wish that we would all treat people with respect, but we don't know that a future city commissioner will be as reasonable as the ones we have. We don't know that every future business will be treating everyone as equally as the great ones that we do have in town today. Unfortunately, our world isn't perfect. Not everyone receives the same treatment that we hope would happen under current law. Rather than restrictions or overreach, this proposal provides Newton residents, our friends, neighbors, students, and children, with an important tool to make our city a fairer place for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Does anybody else have any comments? Please come up, state your name.
Matt Hummingbird, 608 Southwest 14th. We don't need more government telling us what we can and can't do. As a business owner, I'm not. But you should be able to fire anybody for any reason, anytime. Doesn't matter, it's your business. For whatever reason, doesn't matter. Since we pulled the race card, I'm white half the time. And usually when I get out of the car for a job interview, I'm like, you're hired. Soon they don't even give my application. It's a joke. I'm Indian half the time. It doesn't matter. You can fire me for being an Indian or white if you want. It doesn't matter. That should be your right as a business owner. And it's not government's job. That's it.
Anybody else?
Final comments. I was one that first brought, by the way, my name's Christina Murphy. I was one that first brought the equality and non-discrimination before the commission. I've sat here tonight and listened to both sides, and I have to stop and think of what I've went through as a child. I've been many times called blanky because I had a problem with my eyes. I don't like it. The buck stops here. You know, as a citizen, a human being, and as a citizen of this town, the citizens have to hold the commissioners accountable. That's what we're asking for, not to discriminate against or cause churches to say, oh, you can't come here, or to control any business, or you can't come in here because you're gay or lesbian or even transgender like myself. That's not what equality is about. Equality is about love, plain and simple. How much we love can go a long ways. Do we want equality or do we want quality of life? I believe we can have both. If we work together as a community, as commissioners, I'm willing to sit down with each and every person here and discuss. I challenge everybody, commissioners, city attorney, and each and every one of you, sit down with me for 5 minutes. I challenged Clint, and he did. You learned a lot that night, didn't you? We're still human. We do deserve the same rights as others. Those rights that are afforded to the white, the blacks, the Christians. The LGBT community doesn't have those rights. Back years ago, women fought for the right to vote. In the 60s, it was the blacks. There's been a battle of some sort some group since the beginning of time. Where does Newton stand on it? That's the question. If we're gonna protect everybody, then let's be equal in those protections. As I heard many times tonight, yeah, you can't be fired because you're a woman, because you're a protected class. You can't be fired because you're a Christian. Another Christian or religious acts. But the LGBT can be fired for those because of who they are. The state of Kansas, Governor Kelly, did pass for the state workers only protections on these same issues. And I believe you can probably look that up.
Executive order, correct?
Yes, it was an executive order.
So what for the state?
It was just for the state workers. It was not for the general public. So a business that, okay, if I understand the way it was worded, if a business sells to the state for any services or product, and they fire somebody for being gay, yes, they can get in trouble. But if they say, do that to a general public, like say you, for instance, you go down, I'm using a hypothetical here, okay? Say you're gay, you go down here to the rock place here in town. You want to buy a load of rock, but they won't sell to you. You have no protection. Or you,
That's fine, I'll go to a place that wants my business.
right, and that's your privilege.
And yet,
It's a right.
just for the entire audience and to the speaker, this is a public comment portion.
Right. And I apologize. But all these rights that we have as humans should be extended to everybody through love, not hate. Hate should never come into the city of Newton. We should set an example and say, hate will not survive here. Hate does exist now. I've seen it, not personally, but through things that has happened to others. I don't like it because I fought for these rights, and I will still fight. I will fight this fight until one of two things happens. Either my blood quits flowing, or we have equality across the board. Thank you.
Everybody love everybody.
Was there somebody else who wanted to speak? Randy?
Leroy, I just want to say and affirm that Leroy does hire minorities because I'm sure.
I'm sorry, could you state your name and your address, please?
Sorry. I'm Randy DVA, and I work at Boost End Communities. And I just want to affirm what Leroy said earlier. He does hire minorities.